Let me just read a quick introduction of Matteo. Matteo is the CEO and co-founder of Glaut, an AI-native market research software for large-scale customer research studies to extract qualitative insights at scale. In parallel, he's investing in founders building the future through the technology through Pioneer Fund, a pre-seed series, a VC fund. Before being a tech entrepreneur, he started his career in consulting in McKinsey and Company and investment banking, Morgan Stanley. Welcome, Matteo. Please take it away.
Thanks a lot, DJ, for the introduction, and welcome everybody. Congratulations to the presenters before. Great demos. I'm proud to be here. I'm Matt, the CEO and co-founder of Glaut. We are a market research software focused on AI moderated interviews. And I will show you a real case study from a research that we conducted couple of days ago, closed last week. So what is an AI moderated interview? First of all, it's human structured. So we're not talking about synthetic data. We're not talking about synthetic answers. We are talking about a real researcher that is thinking through an outline of key questions that can be either closed or open-ended. The main difference between an AI moderated interview and an in-depth interview conducted by a human is that when we contact the respondent, instead of have a human moderator, we will have our software moderating the interaction. And that happens with few follow-ups happening every time the software has the objective to learn as much as possible about a certain answer or a certain topic. And therefore, we will see the software asking more in-depth questions and asking why, or to make an example. Another huge difference is that is voice-based. We are huge believers that the future of research is voice. Voice is a very natural mean of communication, and we think it will prevail in the future compared to typing interviews. So we built Glaut as a voice interviewer and to allow voice responses in over 50 languages. Now, how did we use Glaut in a real case study? We built a qualitative tracker. Instead of asking people, who are you going to vote for, A or B, we actually asked them about their opinions in an open-ended questions. 1,500 people, so not statistically relevant, 6 weeks. And this was a prototype. It was the first time that we launched it. The client was very interested in just trying a different way of asking people opinions about politics, which is not a political polling. Stepping back for a second, if we would have done this with an interview, with a survey, sorry, this would have looked like a bit like what you're seeing here. So 40, 50 questions of how strongly do you agree with Trump or Harris' perspective on inflation, taxes, import tariffs, and so on and so forth. 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5, and so on. We thought maybe we can do it in a different way because we believe that people do not have an opinion on 40 or 50 dimensions for each of the candidate. So the way we structured it was different. We just asked two very simple questions with a lot of follow-ups and probing. How do you feel about Kamala? How do you feel about Donald Trump? And for every respondent, we created a conversation moderated by our software that went through the, okay, why did you say what you just said? Can you make me an example? And so on and so forth, until basically understanding in depth the reasons behind the first answer. The answers were long, extremely rich in content, and not easy to analyze. The good thing, here is a couple of examples of just the top answer before all the follow-ups. I didn't want to make a live demo because it can get messy on a short webinar, but on the left, you see a first answer for Mr. Trump. On the right, a first answer for Mr. Kamala out of 1,500 respondents, real people in 6 swing states. The incredible thing is that we had 7 minutes overall engagement, and 83% completion rate. We thought this would have been much lower because the methodology was different. It was open-ended questions. It was voice-based. But actually, our client, a political research agency in the United States, they were surprised because they actually had much lower completion rates on previous surveys approach. So they were extremely happy about the completion rate. And more than anything, we collected 40, 50 hours of qualitative research through this type of approach. Once we collected so much text, thousands of pages of verbatim, we thought, okay, we need to analyze it, and therefore we came out with an approach that we call DMI. So we defined the taxonomy ex post, so after the interviews are conducted. We measure sentiment, and then we interpret the results. I'll show it one by one. So the first step, on the left you see a verbatim, the first part of an interview with a single person that is rich of many details. She wants to give small businesses tax breaks. She wants peace in the Middle East. She wants a good relationship with Ukraine. She seems smart and capable. All of these are micro concepts that we call meaning units that our software identifies and codifies as codes. And that's the first step in our analysis. So bottom-ups, from all the text that we get, we are able to identify all the topics that every person mentions. And as a second step, we group these topics in what we call themes, that are groups of meaning units that are consistent, uniform, and not overlapping. Without knowing it from the beginning, but discovering it only at the end of the interview, we identify 10 major themes, 5 about political programs, so people expressing opinions on candidates' political programs, and 5 about personality traits. We didn't ask every respondent to give an opinion about each of these, but these were the sum of everything that people answered. One person might have said a couple of things, another person might have mentioned 8 or 9 of these themes, but basically each person has expressed their opinion based on what was top of her mind. These led us to be able to create these type of graphs that basically state, about 40 to 50% of people out of the personality traits, so the right side that I showed you before, spoke about the ability and competence of candidates when asked, what do you think about Kamala? What do you think about Donald? A much lower percentage of people mentioned their courage or their empathy. And this is already great insight. What really people cared about, what they had top of mind, was about their ability and their personal ethics, and less so about other characteristics of their personality. But as you can imagine, the topic was not enough. We wouldn't know if a person was speaking good or bad about, for example, the empathy of the candidates. So the second step is to define in which direction, in terms of positively or negatively, are people talking about each of the topics that they mention. So you can see that in this verbatim there are 2 negative and 1 positive comment, and this is actually what and how people think. They tend not to think in numbers. We believe they have opinions that are mixed, that are composed, that are hard to express, but once expressed freely, they are analyzable, and that's what we do with Glaut. So if you remember, about 8% of people spoke about empathy, both for Trump and Harris, but when we actually look at the direction of the sentiment, 89% of the comments on Trump were negative, 87% for Harris were positive in terms of empathy perceived. This is just an example, but just to say how different the volume of the comments can be with the sentiment of the comments itself. And based on that, we have been able to create some sort of these type of graphs where on the left you see Trump, on the right you see Harris, on the top you see what has been positively perceived by people, and Trump excelled in courage and did well in ability and competence, which is probably the most important personality trait in terms of volumes. But Harris, on the other side, was perceived as very empathetic. Both of them, funnily enough, scored very low in perceived honesty. Again, this is not statistically relevant. This was not a prediction of the election. It was just an experiment to try to gauge people's opinion about candidates in a different way. As a third step, we incorporate all the data that we accumulated and the thousands of verbatims in reports that can be built based on questions and goals. This is a very interactive relationship between the researcher that poses a question to the data and the data that gives a first narrative and shows a graph. It's an incredible use of software. We're very proud of it. This is just a snapshot. I will not go into the details now. So to summarize, the Glaut offers a new methodology for research that we called AIMI, AI moderated interviews. And this is not opposed, but it's complementary to what are the standard methodologies like CAWI or CATI. Those methodologies that have been used for surveys are based on closed-end questions, whereas Glaut is based on open-ended questions. In surveys, people pick options, one or more, or scores or numbers. In AIMIs, people express opinions. The taxonomy in surveys is predefined, so you have to know exactly what questions you're asking and what options are you putting. Whereas in Glaut, we have seen that we find the themes and the codes after the interviews without any previous taxonomy. And lastly, the results are not calculated only, but they are interpreted in a combination of quantitative and narrative. Benefits of the DMI approach, we have proven to be a better experience for the respondents. Less question, open-ended, voice-based. No topics or theme was left behind because we didn't put that in the option like it happens in a survey. As said, we combined qualitative and quantitative insights. But I think the last two are actually very important. This is super quick. We can go basically from structuring the AIMI to the results in a matter of hours and not weeks if we would do these open-ended interviews, in-depth interviews with people on the streets or by the phone. And compared to those interview costs, we are at a fraction. Thanks a lot for listening to me. Here is a QR code if you're interested to book a demo and my personal email. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Back to you, DJ.